Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Thank you for coming on tonight for the Monday Boost. I have not been on here in a while, and Mondays used to be a relaxing day for me, but my Mondays have gotten quite busy. So forgive me for the inconsistency of the Monday Boost. But I'm back today. And I know my next 2 weeks, I won't be here on Mondays. So I wanted to make sure that I got in today for the Monday Boost. Just going to give people just a second, possibly to come on, even though there's quite a delay between what I'm doing and what I see live on Facebook. But thank you guys again for coming on. Monday Boost is just kind of a sharing of my thoughts that I have wrestled with during the day. And so that's what we're here for tonight. And I'm kind of continuing yesterday's sermon, Keep Going, taken from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, very familiar passage. But today I want to push it a little further to verse 5. So I'm going to look at James chapter 1, verse 5, and let me just pull that up. Let's see. James 1, verse 5. Good evening, Crystal and Sister Ladd. I see you guys on here. So James chapter 1, verse 5. Reading from the New Living Translation says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you, and he will not rebuke you for asking. So again, transitioning from yesterday, where we were talking about keep it going with those first, those verses 2, 3, and 4, which said, count it all joy when you face various trials. And we had this keep going mentality where we embrace the trial. We understand what God is doing through the trial. He's strengthening our faith. And then we let it finish its work. We let God finish his work that God is doing in the trial. And so that was kind of the 3 points of yesterday's sermon. And when you go to verse 5, it's transitioning from there to a place of asking God for wisdom. Because the idea is that the trial is so taxing on us that we need the wisdom to move through the trial. Okay. We need the wisdom to move through the trial. And so here we look at wisdom, and wisdom is the capacity. It's the ability and capacity to understand what is going on and to act in a wise manner. So it's able to grasp the totality of what you are experiencing. It's able to see it from as many angles as possible, and then to act in a wise manner to get through it. And so it was over the weekend, I was reading this article on cheating, and cheating in universities have increased. Cheating in colleges. A professor at Columbia University said that even though she was giving her students take-home exams and gave them a week to do the take-home exams, what they discovered is that cheating had increased almost 3 times. The number of students who were participating in, copying off of each other and helping each other in the exams it tripled. It went up 3 times in Columbia University, and there were other universities, St. Mary's College and Commonwealth, I think it was. All of those colleges had an increase in cheating. And what happened is that because of the pandemic, it put a tremendous amount of stress on the students. The pandemic caused students to be depressed, and they had social isolation, and the only thing they had was Zoom. And so what happened was they would have Zoom classes, and then if they needed help, they would have to contact their counselor or go to office hours for their professor, and then that was another Zoom meeting. And then if they had to go to the writing center to help them with their writing, that was another Zoom meeting. And so it was so much of an overwhelming adjustment just being on Zoom and being all by themselves. They said cheating was bound to happen because they would rather take shortcuts in doing the work rather than asking those who can give them the help that would help them through their class. So they would rather take a shortcut and cheat than to ask somebody for help. And so if we can transition that into our trials, let us not take shortcuts when we are trying to work through our trials. Let's ask God. The text says that we can ask God for this wisdom, and God would give it to us generously. Okay. And so what God does is that God gives us the ability. Okay. God gives us the ability to grasp the truths of life, the surroundings of the condition, the facts. And by God giving this wisdom, God will help us to understand what the facts are and how to respond and how to do what we need to do to gain the victory over the trial. Okay. Now, the trick of the wisdom is that don't be fooled to think that because you have wisdom, that then when you apply the wisdom, is going to make it easier. Okay. Wisdom is not going to make getting through the valley any easier, but it will show you the way. Okay. So we think we got this wisdom from God. Oh, now it's easy. No, it's even harder. It's even harder to apply the wisdom to an actual circumstance that you are going through. Okay. So don't think that because it may remain hard or even, God forbid, get harder, that you have not received the wisdom necessary. Okay. And where do we find wisdom? We find it from God. We find it from God. We find wisdom through prayer. We find wisdom through studying God's word. God speaks to us as we read God's word. That is God communicating to us through the sacred text. Okay. So when we read God's word, if we're not hearing from God in other manners through fasting and other spiritual disciplines, then we read God's word and apply the wisdom to our lives. All right. And that's how we are able to overcome the trouble and the trials, and gives us the ability to keep going. So when we come back to yesterday again, we embrace the trial. We, what was the second point? We understand what God is doing. We let it work its course. And then if I was to add a fourth point, it would be to ask God for wisdom. Ask God for wisdom, because God will give it generously. And then verse 6, if I could just continue, it says, when you ask God, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Don't waver, for a person with undivided loyalty is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. So when you ask God for the wisdom and God gives you the capacity to understand and grasp what's going on, don't waver. Don't say, God, that's not really what I wanted. That's not what I wanted to hear. because it says that we are divided. We're divided in our loyalty, because what we really wanted was for God to give us an easy way out. And sometimes God does not provide an easy way out, but God does provide a way through and out of the trials through the wisdom that he generously gives. So that's our Monday boost tonight. I kept it short. Like I said, I'm gonna try to get back into the swing of this next week, next Monday. However, I have meetings on Monday night as we're getting closer to conference. The following Monday, I have something else going on that I won't be able to attend. Monday boost. I'm going to try to get someone to stand in for me, so we can get these boosts going back again as we get to the end of the conference year. So again, ask God for wisdom, and God will give you the wisdom to keep going. Tomorrow morning we'll be here at 6:15 a.m. I'm back. I'm back on the prayers. The prayer is definitely going on. So I will see you prayerfully tomorrow morning at 6:15 a.m. God bless.